and welcome to the second half of Power Lunch. My guest this afternoon is Tony Manning, and I'm going to be discussing with him the recent departures of three top mining executives over the last couple of weeks. Tony, several resignations in as many weeks. We've seen Ralph Havenstein of Angloplat step down, Bobby Godsell from Anglo, and then most recently and most surprisingly, Swanepoel from Harmony Gold. I'd like to start off by having you tell me what would be the ideal procedure to be followed if a company CEO resigns? You know, what would, in your idea, be the best way to handle that announcement?
Well, it depends why he's resigning. If in the case of Bobby Godsell, it was something that was in the pipe for a long time. There was a sense that he was looking at moving. There obviously was a succession planned in train, and the whole process had been well thought out, but still it was a surprise when it came. In the other two cases, it was a complete surprise. All of a sudden, these guys were not there, and there was a multitude of reasons given for it, and there's a whole lot of speculation as to exactly why it happened. The companies then sit with the damage control situation, as you saw with Harmony's share price very quickly taking a big knock. And the question then is, who is behind these people that can come in and take the job? And the company has a big selling job to do to assure people that, in fact, there is a depth of management skill behind those executives. Because some people, whatever the reasons are, some people are going to get very edgy about chief executives leaving that quickly.
Right. And let's look at that on a case-by-case basis. Ralph Havenstein, 4 years in the job, announces on the day of the results that he's going to be stepping aside. And the announcements are very short, masterpiece of brevity, mere 2 paragraphs. What is your take on that, the process that they followed in making that announcement, particularly the Havenstein announcement?
I really don't know. It was such a surprise, and there was just an enormous amount of speculation at the time, and it centered initially on the safety issue, and perhaps he'd had a spat with the new chief executive as a consequence of that. And then there were other issues about their productivity and their empowerment processes and so on, which came into the picture. So the precise reason, I don't know, but I think that it was not handled for a big company like that very well. But I'm not sure how you pre-announce that somebody is going to leave under those circumstances. It's a very tough PR problem.
Right.
The difficulty that they will have is convincing, I think, a skeptical audience that a newcomer can come in under this banner of safety and actually make a difference in a very dangerous mining area.
Right, because platinum mining, I mean, they have a number of structural problems with rocky ground that they work in.
Absolutely.
Fatalities are inevitable. I mean, sure. And, you know, to see somebody, perhaps the CEO stepping aside because of safety issues, it is, as you say, a concern.
Look, it's become a red-hot issue. It's a very political issue in South Africa as well. But the reality is that you are dealing with structurally very, very dangerous places. And to make a difference is not just a matter of putting in new processes or new machinery or, you know, something as easy as that. Right. It is a very, very tricky thing.
An in-depth thing. And we saw, I think, the stock price respond with a bit of a dip following the announcement. And again, the brevity of the announcement was what really struck me. I think it was poorly handled and
well, again, you know, I'm not sure what else you say.
Yeah.
There's normally in these circumstances some kind of contractual arrangement between the parties. And so both of them, I think, are going to be quite cautious about what they say. There's a whole lot of stuff which apparently seems to be leaking out at the moment. And I guess will continue over the months to do so. But it's a very difficult PR problem.
In terms of disclosure, I mean, you're a former chairman of the Institute of Directors. What is the company required to tell us about the departure of senior executives?
I don't think it's required to tell you very much at all. If somebody has left under adverse circumstances, or if somebody, for that matter, suddenly upped and left, that puts the company on the back foot. But I don't think they're required to tell you anything. They're not required to divulge what was a confidential arrangement.
Okay, so there's not any legally required
not that I'm aware of.
That they would require. So as you say, it really comes down to being a PR problem.
Yeah.
With it. Exactly. Moving on to looking at Bobby Godsell, as you said, like a less of a surprise, he has been in the job CEO 10 years and 2 years before that, managing the uranium and gold division, but we still saw a bit of a share price dip. I think a better handled departure, would you agree?
Yes, because there was a sense in the marketplace that at some stage he was going to go because the intention had been kind of signaled. Again, I think it was a surprise in the fact that it came so close to Ralph Havenstein's departure, and then, you know, there were three of them all of a sudden, and there was a kind of tumult of the mining industry. So one makes a huge story out of it, and it was an announced thing.
Right,
it was an anticipated thing.
Right, and we feel more confident about the depth of management there. We know that there are people stepping up.
And a successor was immediately named. You know,
right, yes.
Apparently a very competent person.
Clearly
the
process.
The questions are, why is the competent person elected to take this particular job? So that'll be another debate.
Right. But still, I think we would agree then a better handled process, more clearly disclosed, and more
easier to handle process. Yeah.
And then finally, the most abrupt, the departure of Bernard Swanepoel, which we saw announced with immediate effect, and together with the announcement that the financials were not going to be as good as had been anticipated. I don't know if you have been following the announcement, but what is your take on this particular departure?
Well, only what I can read in the media, which says that it was, there were performance issues, and since they tried to take over Goldfields, there have been question marks over where the company was headed to, and I guess there was a discussion about where can this individual take the process to. But more than that, I don't know, because there's nothing more being said.
Right. And what do you read into that? The fact that we were given this announcement, Swanepoel has been prohibited from speaking publicly on the topic. Don't you think it creates a potential breeding ground for rumors?
Yes, of course it does, but there are always difficulties in these situations. Exactly why did this person go, or why was a person pushed? And if a person gets pushed, it's not in their interests to have a whole lot of stuff out in the public domain saying that they got shoved for X and Y and Z reasons. So these things become breeding grounds for speculation, unfortunately. It's always a tricky public relations problem, but I think the lesson is clear that organizations need to think very carefully about their succession processes, because if there's a sense when these things do happen that succession has not been thought through and that there might be a vacuum, then you create enormous jitters in the marketplace very, very quickly. So that's the lesson.
Right. We saw Harmony's share price taking a pretty significant dip after the announcement there, and particularly with the CEO like Swanepoel, who's been involved for
absolutely and very prominent and a real character.
Right. Yeah. So you were mentioning the other lessons that other companies can take from this in terms of succession planning. Does any company come to mind as one that has handled this process very well, the process of transitioning from CEO to CEO?
Well, I think the two most obvious ones recently have been Pick and Pay, where Nick Badminton came in behind Sean Summers, and then Grant Patterson succeeding Mark Lamberti at Massmart. I think both of those were handled extremely well. There was advance notice of what was happening, that there was a depth of management in both cases. The selection process had been carefully handled. The handover was being very carefully handled. So I think those two companies have really set terrific examples. Many others are much more careless about the process.
Right.
They assume you can hire anybody and they can run anything. That's not how it works.
No, indeed. We had an article on our MoneyWeb website which said that of the top 20 companies on the JSE, only 5 have not experienced a CEO change in the last 3 years. So it seems quite a rapid churn. What is your reading of that? Is this just the imperative of a globalized economy where we see CEOs changing more frequently? Or is there
I think that's part of it. I think the circumstances for South African businesses are very different than they were a decade or 2 decades ago. We're in an extremely competitive environment. But I think as well that there's, in many cases, if one were to get to the truth, I think you'd find that they just have had enough of the complexities of this particular environment, and they will move on to other things. This environment is highly politicized. It's very difficult doing business. You're distracted by things that are not directly your business. And the pressures are absolutely enormous, and you're required to make decisions which are not often business decisions.
I wish we had more time for this. Fascinating subject indeed. Please join us after the break. I'm going to be speaking with Havenstein, the chairman of Pamodzi Investment Holdings, whose company has recently launched a very large private equity fund. Thank you.